Hey everyone, I'm your host, Quinn Magnuson. Welcome to the EOR podcast, the show for leaders, high performers, and the secrets to grit, growth, and greatness. I want to ask you something. Are you an organization looking to build a rock-solid strategy that will grow your people and end up in increased productivity and profitability? Then I invite you to start by going over to our website, effortoverresults.com, and book your free strategy call directly with me. No obligation, no bots or sticky email campaigns, just a friendly one-to-one call so I can learn more about you and your team goals. So if you're ready to get real, go over to effortoverresults.com, book your free call today. And now, let's get back to the show. Today on the EOR podcast, our guest is Emily Erstad, healthcare executive, leadership coach, and author of It's Not That Deep. She's redefining what emotional intelligence really means at work, not as a buzzword, but as a skill set that separates burnout from breakthrough. If you've ever felt like you had to hide how you feel to lead well, this conversation will challenge that. We get into emotional IQ, vulnerability, performance culture, and why real leadership starts with self-awareness. Emily Erstad, welcome to the EOR podcast. Let's go. Emily Erstad, what's the biggest leadership lie that we've normalized?
That you come to work and you leave yourself at home.
So where does that line get drawn and why does it get drawn? And why is there still that old school mentality of leave your emotions at the door once you cross the workplace threshold?
I think we as a culture have never done a great job of recognizing the significance of our emotions, and they're messy, always messy. They're unpredictable, and that's not very efficient or effective in a workplace. So our solution was, well, if they can't be there, they must just not be there, right? Very this or that. I think we've gotten stuck in a mindset of two things can't be true at the same time when they can, right? Finding that boundary, that barrier, it's definitely tricky. It doesn't happen overnight. And I think there's a lot of factors that feed into it that you have to consider. I have a healthcare background, so my background's going to look a little bit different than someone that works in accounting, right? But I think it's something that we really need to focus in, hone in on, visit on what that looks like present day.
I think the stoicism and the lack of emotion in leadership is very 20th century. As we come into the 21st century, and now we've been around for a couple decades, it's starting to show itself in different places, and obviously it's been very effective.
Yeah.
Why do some leaders continue though to, I will call it, block themselves from being emotionally intelligent and or emotionally vulnerable?
I think, probably a couple of reasons. One, it's exhausting. It's exhausting to have your emotions and moderate the emotions of your employees. It's unpredictable. It's you're in a high stress situation, so you don't want to maybe necessarily bring another factor into something that's already difficult. Maybe we just don't have that awareness. We don't know. We're task over people, right? We're trying to get our tasks done. We forget the people because people can be inconvenient, if we're honest. But business is people. So we've got to find the boundary and the happy medium. I think we get so focused on ourselves that we forget that we're leading a whole team. And we are the calm. We are the foundation. We choose the people we put into the systems to exacerbate our strengths versus our weaknesses. And I think to figure that out, you have to be emotionally aware. You have to consider that there are things outside of yourself that are going to affect that scenario. And that's the part of our job that I think probably we just don't have the bandwidth for some days, like you're doing all these that middle management job. Corporate has a list, your staff have a list, you're in the middle trying to find where you fit. And that's not always clear. And so sometimes getting in your emotions yourself is exhausting because you're trying to put your emotions aside to be better for others. But then considering somebody else's emotions, you feel like, you're probably like, you gotta be kidding me. Like, how am I going to do all of this? I've been there. I still get there, even when I've practiced it for a while.
Yeah, I think you mentioned middle management. I think middle management, managers, supervisors, people who are leading the teams, not the C-suite, but right below that, have the toughest job because
Sure.
they are trying to manage the personalities and emotions of people on either side of them. So they've got the C-suite, or let's say the ownership above them, which is putting pressure on them to be good leaders and develop, their people, and obviously create profitability and productivity for the company. But then they're also trying to lead a bunch of people who are looking to be led and to be grown. So middle management being like the most probably the most emotional roller coaster that you could,
Mhm.
potentially be on. And I think this is why managers tend to default to just then managing. They
Yeah.
they have a hard time allowing the emotionality and the vulnerability into it because, like you said, it just creates one more element of chaos. Would you agree with that statement?
100%.
Yeah.
Working in hospice, I always tell my staff we're surrounded by chaos 24/7. We have to be the calm. We have to create the systems. We have to create the processes because we know we are guaranteed that life that day will bring the chaos for us. So of course you don't want that in your team. Um, I think personally, I have just decided that I am going to invest in my team's emotional well-being. And it's going to exhaust me. That first 6 months on a new job, building those relationships, building that trust, it takes you really sacrificing yourself, your mental, your mental well-being, your sanity, knowing that it's going to pay off in the future. I think we frequently as companies don't want to invest in that piece because some people take that, leverage it, and become hurricanes, right? Like they're just the people that you're like, it's 8:30 in the morning, they're trying to tell you about the fight they had with so and so over the weekend, and you're like in the middle of 12 emails, 7 calls, getting ready for the week, and this person assumes that their emotional trauma is more important than what you're doing in that moment. So I think that's where we definitely get in this cycle of emotions are bad. They bring people to me that I can't solve their problems. I'm a fixer, I'm a doer. I can't fix this. Instead of empowering our staff to have these conversations and not maybe taking responsibility, but providing a framework for them to explore that.
I agree. Much like a parent and child, the child will tend to mimic the emotionality of their parent. So if the parent is, very scattered, very highly emotional, bit of a roller coaster, the child is going to either mimic that, or they are going to be they are heavily affected by it, right? But they
Yeah.
will tend to fall into line with what that emotional roller coaster is. And I'm a prime example of that. My mother was an emotional roller coaster, and I kind of went on that ride with her.
Mhm.
Whereas, for example, my wife's mother is very flatline. Her emotionality is like little blips here and there, and it shows in my wife's emotionality. So, how does a leader in a workplace, and I realize you're unique in the hospice industry, which can be a very a strong, high emotional environment, but how does a leader bring balance
Yeah.
to their environment without getting over emotional and then not getting, too um clinical?
Sure, sure, sure. The strategy I use, and I talk about it in my book quite a bit, is a spectrum of transparency versus vulnerability. We know that trust is built when we're vulnerable, so it's a necessary evil, but it shouldn't happen before we're transparent. And to be transparent, and what that means for me, is really being sure of yourself first. Like before you go into these scenarios, you need to know who you want to be as a leader. What are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? Know your strengths, exacerbate those strengths, and surround yourself and build teams that mitigate your weaknesses. I'm a
Mm,
visionary, I'm not a detail person. So I need someone that's more in the detail so I can put the puzzle pieces together. I'm not going to put someone next to me that's a visionary and butt heads with them all the time.
mm,
I think being transparent, it's hard. In my role, I am the boundary, right? I am the boundary of where emotion stops, which is funny because I am very like, I'm a therapist by trade, so very emotional. But in this role, I don't get to be that person. And so I knew that going in. I don't get to be the person that empathizes. I get to be the person that kind of reverse psychologies a little bit and says, okay, so what are you going to do about that? How do you feel about that? Okay,
mm.
that's the feeling. Where does this go? Always bringing strategies and solutions, right? So I came into this team, the current role I'm in December, and I had just come a very well established team, led them through an acquisition, wasn't quite ready for the transition. Came to this team, and I knew my strategy was going to be different because they had been doing the same thing for 5 years incorrectly and had been performing poorly. And I was going to be the catalyst of change. And I knew that. And I knew I was going to have to take those hits in a very chaotic environment. So I don't get to be close to those staff. I have an inner circle and then I have my staff. Of course, I empathize with them. Of course, I get in the boat with them, but not in the way maybe that they would see that. I do it differently because I have to maintain that separation to hold us in that framework. That's specific to hospice, but I think it's very generalizable to other roles. So I have my people that I'm close to. I pick 2 or 3 that I am raw, vulnerable. I get all my stuff out. I'm like, you need to check me because I am a force. Oh, am I a force? And so I do have to have that vulnerable. I'm very good at kind of taking a step back, being radically vulnerable. I hate it. It gives me mad anxiety. I do not like it, but it's where I've been most effective as a leader. So people can know my why. If you know my why, you're going to follow. If you understand. And so I think practicing just really consistent transparency, whether it be with the goals of the company, with your methodology of leadership, with your obstacles that we're overcoming, that consistency can lead to vulnerable conversation where you can sit your staff down and say, hey, I know I'm not doing all of this correctly. There's no way I can. I need it with your feedback. I'm going to give you that opportunity. And then being open when you do open that door of vulnerability to receive things that you're probably going to be absolutely exhausted by. Wouldn't recommend doing that on a Friday evening, right? Like do it when you have the energy, because I've made that mistake too, where I'm like asking for feedback that frankly I'm not going to take anyway because I'm at my max. So I think there's some timing to that as well. But to kind of recap, like that spectrum of like, okay, I'm going to start this job very transparently, probably brutally honest, and then I will migrate to that vulnerable side of things, but only when it's appropriate. And I hate to say it, but it's a tool. It's a tool to build trust. It's a tool to relieve some stress. If you can look at it as a way, I don't want it to be like a power grab because that's not the intention of it, but that's what it is. You're in control of your vulnerability. So there's nothing to be afraid of and there's nothing to be anxious about. And when I say that to myself too, because even publishing a book and being a leader in hospice care and going from therapy to leadership and being all these things and getting on these podcasts, like not necessarily my first inkling to do that, right? But knowing that that is where my strength is. And so challenging myself in those strengths and then getting the things I'm not so good at, delegating to the people I've built around me that are phenomenal at those tasks.
Yeah.
So it's kind of leveraging your environment.
Oh, for sure. I think in business and hospice is a business. I mean, you have to run it like a business. It's play to your strengths and hire or support your weaknesses, right? And you mentioned that. What advice would you give to a new leader, let's say like in your position, going into a new environment, new job, and the first 6 months? What do you think is the best thing for them to do in the first 6 months of that position?
Well, before you get into this job, make sure you do a simpler job that you feel like you can master some of your skills in, because this
Okay,
job I took over definitely had different geographies. I'm going to give a little context just so you
yeah,
understand where my head was
please.
at. It was over 3 towns that are all 2 hours apart. So three different cultures, 3 different teams, 3 different challenges, different communities. I mean, completely different. The place I came from prior, 1 town, 1 hospice. So I knew the culture of the community. I knew the culture of the team. When I took this next job, I was actually headhunted for the position. I wasn't ready for this job. I
Mm,
wasn't planning on taking this job, but just made sense. So I did it, kind of made sense. It scared the crap out of me, if I'm frank. But going into it the second time, the first time what I did, there's a really good training program. Make sure you know your stuff, first of all. Like if you're going to walk into some of these places and you're the expert, be the expert and don't second guess yourself. And be consistent in it. I think consistency is key. I think
mm,
we start to get that self-doubt, imposter syndrome. I am so terrible with that. And I'm like, am I doing it right? Am I doing this? Know that any system you put in place, no matter where you work, it's going to take 90 days for you to know if that process is working, right? Whatever corporate tells you, it does not matter, because if you can't try a system for 90 days, how are you going to know what to fix?
yeah.
If everything's changing all the time, you won't know. You won't know what buttons or levers you're pulling to be effective. So I think be your expert, know what you're getting into, be dynamic enough to address situations and meet people where they're at, and then be consistent over a 90-day period of time. When I walked into this role, it was not looking pretty. Everything was bad. And the things they said that were good were actually the worst, the
Mm.
worst thing possible. So I was like, this is not good. And so I just chunked it, man. You triage, you chunk it, and then you get
Yeah.
consistent real quick. And so I just kind of stripped everything to the bones and said, this is the system, we're following it. Follow me or don't, but this is what we're going to do. Of course, some people left the team, some people were irritated, but then those 90 days hit and, pressure from underneath, pressure from above, pressure from the side, pressure from yourself. And you're like, okay, this is a big task. And then you get 90 days in and you start seeing some change and you're like, okay, tweak this, and this. It might be a person, it might be a process, it might be you. Like you won't know until you are really aware. But then having a partner that you can be so radically vulnerable with about your weaknesses, about your doubts, about, and has a good vision of the business. So having all that and then backing it by data. Emotions are great, backed by data. Like don't, because when the data starts talking, it takes that pressure off where you can have more energy for the emotional piece of it. In the beginning, I didn't, my 61st 60 days in, I was watching. I watched the people. I watched the people above me. I played dumb. I didn't know anything. I was a blank slate. I had my gut feelings. You walk in, you meet someone, you're like, and I'm like, nope, we're not doing that. We're going in, we're going to get to know these people and we're going to see where they're at. My gut was right. I'll probably follow that a little bit more accurately next time, but getting to don't be so, I don't want to say arrogant, but don't think you're so right that people can't prove you wrong. Because as soon as you get to that point, you're in trouble. If you think you've got to figure it out, oh my Lord, I feel so bad for you. You're about to get taught a really hard lesson. So I think it's just going in open-minded, but consistent, because you are the consistency for that team and you are the calm. And if you can't be those two things, other people can't be what they need to be because they're going to be absorbed by your chaos. Have your chaos, do that somewhere else. Don't do that in front of your team. Or build such a strong team that you do it together, but it's efficient. And I think that's even a level up of a team, but that takes time. That takes time, and that takes really finding your right and left hand, that know you, and we tolerate each other's crazy because everybody has it, and that's okay. It's just, let's make sure it's productive.
You mentioned consistency, and I want to unpack that for a second because I think it's and this isn't just in a workplace environment. Consistency from leadership is paramount to success in all areas. It's the coaches on in the sports arenas, it's your teachers in your classrooms, it's your parents with your children, employers and employees. Children want to see consistency from their parents. They don't want chaos. As much as kids like to be chaotic, they don't want chaos. Students, when the teacher walks into the classroom, the students can sense if a teacher is not prepared, and they will take advantage of that. Coaches, if you're not prepared, your athletes will take advantage of it. They will not perform, and it'll be horrible. But like you said, consistency. One of the biggest mistakes I think leaders make, or new leaders make, and when I say new leaders, either you've been appointed into a leadership position for the first time, or you're going to a new environment, a new company, a new business where you are now a leader there. One of the biggest mistakes they make, and I think you mentioned the term triage, and I think they do this because they're trying to triage as quickly as possible, is to make judgment calls and fixed mindset statements on each person they meet as they go through their first few weeks. And what I mean by that, Emily, is, and I've experienced this, you have a leader. I had a leader once that walked in and basically had heard some things about me, for example, and assumed that they were all true. So then treated me immediately like that was all true, even though they did it didn't even ask my side of things. Okay. Later on, different leader ignored all the noise and basically tried to find out who I was and how I operated and let me be me. And I flourished in that. So how does one in a new leadership position triage that situation where, say, you have a new team of 20 people and some of them are really over emotional, some of them don't show any emotion at all? How do you manage all of that? And I think you're going to go back to the term consistency, which I hope you do, because I think that's important for everybody. But how do you manage so many different personalities and be successful with that?
I'll speak in specific context here, and
Sure,
I'll kind
please.
of, scaffold it out. But when I started this job, spent time, just unintentional. Like there was no intention in my time. I just spent time sitting in offices, talking to people, hearing them in different contexts. I always say it's for my own entertainment. Ask questions just for the shock factor. Sometimes I like to, and I will be vulnerable myself just to get not even a response of like sympathy or anything, just like, how do you handle this information? Like, who are you? Where is your heart at? Where's your head at? And it's definitely the intention of building a relationship, but it's really seeing like, where does your compass lie? Who are you? A lot of people don't know who they are, frankly, and you got to tell them. And that's why you're there. And I hate that. And I don't mean tell them in the sense of this is who you're going to be, but I think it's giving them choices that are very like this or that, letting them have that choice. But then knowing when they choose this or that, that's how we're going to scaffold you in this environment, right? So I'll give a very black and white example. I'm tasked to grow this hospice that I have been hired for. We are growth oriented or we are not, right? Those are our two options. So the systems and the things we do either bring us business or they turn business away.
Mm.
That's a simple framework. If you can't align just on that, right? Consistently over time, if you're making consistent choices where people don't want to call you, people don't want to pick up the phone and talk to our business because they don't want to get on the phone with you, you're making things overly complicated because it makes it comfortable for you. I'm delegating my job to someone else and bottlenecking my systems because I don't want to do the job. Whatever it might be, this might not be the fit for you, right? You can't be at a top level leadership position if you're not oriented to the main goal of growth. I think once you get that initial goal decided, whatever that is, whatever your company and you decide that that is, you weed them out that way. That's the first, like, whether you like them as a person or not, because let's be honest, personal and professional in this scenario are separate. I can love you as a person. You might be in the wrong seat of the bus, right? Like you might just not be right where I need you to be at. And if there's those more tricky people that you're unsure of, you test them. You give them the processes and the systems. I've had some leaders where I've given it to them and watched them crumble. I've had some that have offered to come beside me and we'll develop them together. That's who you want. You want the person that sits with you in the thick of it and wants to problem solve with you. I think frequently I think micromanaging took on a different term when it used to be like, oh, I really want it to be my way. I want it to be my way. And that's why I'm micromanaging. Yeah, that's the typical definition of it. Sure. But how about the people that just can't formulate thought independently and you're stuck there? Like, what does that bridged gap look like? Because we do have to have a culture of wanting to better ourselves. But also, if someone's running as fast as they can, you can't whip them. Like if they're doing all they can, why are we going to come at them harder? So I think it's just having that start with your initial, this is our goal. Okay, do we have the right people in the seats to do this goal? Do they belong on this team at all? Right. And I think that's a fair conversation because I think it's always like when acquisitions or new leadership comes in, it's like, oh, I'm going to lose my job. I'm so upset, blah, 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 whatever. Maybe this is the best thing that ever happened to you because you're going to go find something that's a better fit for you and makes you a better person. Maybe that leader, yes, they close the door on the opportunity with them, but maybe it pushes you into a better opportunity that exacerbates your strengths. Maybe this environment is so toxic and exacerbating the weaknesses of everyone that nobody's effective. And yes, it's hard to be the person that makes that decision for people that don't even know that they're in a cycle like that. But I can even speak from experience. Like I had a job, I was working my butt off, thought I was doing the greatest things, over dedicating myself, overly emotional, burnt myself out, and I was let go. And it tore me apart. And then I realized that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I mean, it was literally the best thing that could have happened. I learned so much about myself. I learned who I didn't want to work for. I learned who I didn't want to be as a leader. And then it really made me more aware of those people underneath me. It's like that hurricane that I talk about, the people that are vulnerable before transparent, the people that can't get out of their own way, and if you can accomplish that goal with them and bridge that gap, it usually happens pretty quick when you introduce a framework. But if they fight that framework, hand over foot, cannot seem to get over it, it just might not be a good fit for them. That doesn't mean they're a bad person. It doesn't mean you don't like them. It doesn't mean whatever. It just means that this right now, you've either outgrown it, your life, personal life is not aligning with your professional life. They are not aligned in some way or another. You don't have to own that, but you can't tolerate it either. And I think sometimes we'll do that too, just out of convenience. We'll tolerate people's behaviors because we're like, well, we're not going to find somebody else in that position. You will.
Yeah.
You will, but don't let, one bad blueberry can ruin the bunch. So that's also on you too. Because if you have one person that's spinning, of course it's hard not to get pulled into that energy. I mean,
The
it's
vortex. Yeah.
the vortex of whatever, it gets
Yeah.
wild quick. In my book, I talk about hurricanes. That's how I always look at these people. They're coming. You see them, they're days away. They tell you to evacuate. Some of us don't. What are we doing? They come, they leave destruction in their wake, and then they leave and you pick it back up. And then they come again the next time. And we act surprised every time, but I'm not sure why we're surprised because we told you it was a hurricane, looks like a hurricane, walks like a hurricane. It's going to ruin your life. So either create a situation that's effective or understand that this person might not be the best fit for that scenario. And that's a hard
Yeah,
decision as a leader,
it
man.
is.
That's brutal because there's been a few I've walked out, hated my guts, didn't
Yeah.
see, and I was watching the job destroy them. I'm like, "What do you mean? Like, you hate it here. You hate it here, and you're begging me to stay." And I had a scenario where I talked to actually a good friend that was underneath, like we were peers, and then job, how you do the whole scaffolding, and he pissed. I mean, I got some nasty, nasty words when I let him go, and it was really nerve-wracking for me. Um, and then 3 months later, got a text, "You that was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm so sorry that I did that, but I'm so much happier." So I know it's right, even though it doesn't feel right in the moment.
Yeah. It's interesting you mentioned that, Emily, because I've had that happen twice in my life, and I won't get into specifics, but where I was let go or basically I decided to leave because the environment just was so horrible. But at the same time, later on I look back and I go, man, I'm so glad that person said that thing to me that made me
Mhm,
want to leave. Because
mhm.
it helped me grow. It gave me some feedback, but it also pushed me out of my comfort zone into finding something different. And it's all kind of worked out. And I do
Yeah.
believe that everything happens for a reason, good or bad, because
Mhm,
it changes the way we see things, our perception and our growth pattern. One of the things I want to talk about in terms of leadership is leadership and I mentioned the 20th century, but it's like leadership always seems to be equated with experience and knowledge, meaning the people that get the leadership positions have the most experience for the most part and or have the most knowledge of that
uh-huh.
particular say department or area.
Yeah,
That's changing.
yeah.
Is it changing quick enough? And what does leadership look like now in terms of the criteria that companies are looking for in their leaders?
Gosh, that's such a hard conversation. It's
Right.
hard because I mean, this is something I live daily, I mean, I'm 30 years old running a multi-county hospice. Like I sometimes don't even feel like if I'm transparent, I'm like, what am I doing here? I do know if my staff are, I do know what I'm doing, I promise. But like there's just these moments where you're like, because experience for so long was the standard. Like I have to have experience to be able to do something. And to that I will say, doing something wrong for 20 years doesn't really mean much to me or anybody around you because it wasn't effective. I think the answer is balance. Does balance really exist? I'm not sure. I don't think it's about experience. I think it's about your mindset. I think it's, are you
Mm,
open-minded? Are you dynamic?
mm,
Are you, because you can be dynamic at 50, you can be dynamic at 25, you can be like, what are you bringing to the table? I think it's really not even about time. I think it's about, are you an effective communicator? Do you bring enough perspective? Are you effective in that perspective? Can you build systems? Can you affect change beyond yourself? I think we need to quit asking the questions of how long you've been doing this and start asking, what would you change here and what would you do here? And then just stop having that conversation. I can't tell you how many times people will talk to me like, I can't believe you're that young. What do you mean? You're doing this, that, and the other. They're right. I mean, sometimes I'm like, yeah, it's like, you're right. I don't know. I don't know how. I mean, I do know how I got here. I could
that's
tell
where
you all
imposter
freaking
syndrome kicks
day.
in.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm like, I could tell you how I got here, but that's a
Yeah,
really vulnerable conversation that we might
yeah,
not want to do right now, you know?
yeah.
But I think we need to start. That's why emotional intelligence is so, so, so epically important because it should take the place of that conversation. We really need to start doing like aptitude tests of like, do you know who you are? Do you know what
Mm,
your strengths are? And what would you do to mitigate your weaknesses? If you can't do it for yourself, you're not going to do that for anybody else. And if you're so stuck in how we did something in 1990, we got a problem
mm,
because we have technology now that's going to outpace you in seconds. And I don't think, and that's a bigger conversation, technology, right? But, you know, we're unique humans and we're unique because we have emotion. Like that is our strength. Like that is what makes us different. So the
yeah.
fact that we've always wanted to diminish that has made absolutely no sense to me. But I also understand it because I've been that 22-year-old girl. It's so chaotic. People can't even get within 10 feet of me because I'm so much. I wouldn't disagree with you, But if we can teach people to harness that and put it towards things that are productive, it'd be pretty phenomenal to see what's effective and what would change. You're not going to go into a dying person's home and be professional. I can promise you that's not going to work. It's a
Mhm,
very intimate dynamic, and healthcare is one of the largest industries that probably needs the most help right now. We are not doing it well, and so why do the same thing over and over again and expect a different result? I believe that's a definition of insanity. So maybe we need to look beyond ourselves, meet people where they're at, and then decide on that spectrum of transparency and vulnerability. Like where are we meeting them at? Where do we need to be at to either scaffold them? What's our purpose? What is our intention? What are we doing there? Am I here with you to have a conversation, or am I scaffolding the conversation? Like, I think if you can just be really clear on what you need, effectively communicate that, and then add that structure to whoever it is you're with, you can accomplish really great things. And I think we've always said, oh, communication is everything. Communicate, like you hear that all
Mhm.
the time, which is like great in theory, but what does that mean? Like, we can communicate all day, but are you hearing me? Where's the comprehension? I always love that saying, like, I can communicate this to you all day, but I can't comprehend for you.
Mm.
And I think, sure, we can, and even if you are a direct communicator, I'm so direct, I'm so good at being direct or hostile. Like, you can be kind and direct. You can be, two things can be true at the same time. So I think there's just this delicate balance, and it's specific to each person. I mean, my Emily now is not the same Emily she was a year ago, isn't the same Emily she was 5 years ago. And I think that's kind of the chaos of it, right? Like, humans don't like change. We don't
Yeah.
like to be uncomfortable. But I think as soon as you get comfortable, complacency quickly follows. And that's where we find ourselves in a tough spot of, you don't want to run yourself over and not appreciate the present, but you also don't want to stay the same person for the next 15 years. You're not going to like who you are in 15 years. You're not going to fit your environment. And I think it's just having such a knowing of yourself that you can go into any dynamic and be confident in who you are.
Mm.
Easier said than done.
Yeah, I have so many comments and questions and thoughts on what you've just said. I'll stick to this one for now, though, and I'm going to go back to the term hurricane. I believe that, I mean, short of assessing someone just is just not good for that particular work environment, meaning A, they're toxic, B, they're really just causing chaos that is not helpful to anybody or themselves.
Sure.
But those people who are, as my 20-year-old daughter would say, extra,
Mhm.
a little bit extra, a little bit, maybe a little bit emotional, wear their emotions on their sleeves. But you sense there's passion there. You sense
Mhm.
that emotional emotionality in them, and that passion in them can be, if harnessed, can be very productive. And I think that's where sometimes leaders, and I know you've discussed this already today, Emily, but where some leaders fall short. It's like they don't want to deal with the emotional person. They don't want to deal with that person who's a little extra, has a little more energy, comes a little too genuine and authentic to the workplace each day. But it's like, no, those are some of the best people to work with, because they want to be part of something.
Sure.
They truly have that passion to try and affect change and to be part of a team, but they have to be handled differently. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I mean, I was that person. I was
Okay.
a very
Me too.
passionate person. I mean, I
Yeah.
was I was so excited to affect change. I mean, it's interesting. I went in to be a therapist to not manage people. I was like, I'm just
Mhm.
going to help people. I'm not going to manage them. And then
Mhm.
kept finding myself in managerial role after managerial role. And I was like, okay, both my parents do operations, so I probably should have just seen it coming, but hindsight, right? So I think you have to burn yourself a couple times. So to the person that is that like, let me talk to that person first.
Mhm.
You're that firecracker that has so much to offer, so much to bring. People don't know what to do with you. You feel like you're too much, you're too much of this or too much of that. Check your environment first. Are you where you want to be? Because I was told frequently that I was too much. And I'm like, too
Mm.
what? Too much what? Because I'm like, well,
Right.
too much for you is fine, but I'm thriving. Like, I'm publishing books, I'm doing all these things. So I mean, who are you asking that opinion from first? I think don't take advice from people you don't want to be, would be
Very
my
good.
opinion.
Yep.
Because that's not cool. Um, Typically when people tell you they're too much, that's just them saying I'm intimidated and don't know what to do with you. If you do have that person in your life and you do need to work with them, I would encourage you to be very specific in your communication. That
Mm.
passion that you're feeling inside of yourself isn't meant for everyone. It's for you, it's not for them. So why are you giving people access to that? I used to think like, oh, my job is to fill this person's cup. My job is to affect change. Your job is to be the best you possible and accomplish your goals. I think
Mhm.
we were taught, especially as women, like, we're here for everyone else. We create that foundation. We're the homemakers, we're the creatives. And
Mhm.
yeah, like, but if you're empty yourself, what's that going to do for everybody else? Right.
Yeah.
So I think it's, if that passion isn't for everybody else, that's for you. That's for you to give yourself the energy to get you where to go. So I think, yes, I want you to share that with the world. You should, but it has to be intentional. It has to be intentional because it can be overwhelming. You know it's overwhelming, and this is a cue for you, that person. When you leave a conversation, you don't know what you accomplished, you know what you talked about, and you're like, adrenaline's pumping.
Mm,
How'd that partner feel? Did they
mm,
glaze over? Like, were you looking at them, or was your intention to communicate with them, or you were so excited you needed to be heard? And if you're excited and need to be heard, pick the timing of that conversation wisely because you're only going to set yourself up both for failure if that person doesn't have the bandwidth in that moment. So that would be like that first sign of like, hey, that's me, right?
mm.
Make sure you know it's you. That's the first, because sometimes we don't know. We're just so happy to be alive, which is really great. But when you're overwhelming everyone around you, is that effective? And is that even accomplishing the goal that you have? Probably not. So I think if that's you and you have this passion and you know you have all this energy, set some goals for yourself. When you're going to have conversations with people, they could be small goals, right? Before you get to that conversation, I need this, 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 and this. Get that part of the conversation done first. Check that box, then share your passion, share your humor. My passion's very humorous. It gets a little crazy sometimes. So I know I'm going in for this conversation, but I'm also gonna, I call it the sandwich effect, right? Funny, bulk of my conversation funny.
Yep.
Sometimes I change the bulk of the conversation with disciplinary action, but I call it the sandwich, right?
Yeah.
I would encourage that for anyone that's feeling that. And then, so look at your environment. We'll start there. If you're in the right environment and you need to tailor the conversation, set some goals for yourself. Look at the timing that you're having the conversation. And then if you do have that passion, find a network of people that are passionate with you. Put that energy towards them. Put it towards yourself. Don't put it in places it's not accepted or people are telling you you're too much. It's not worth it. They're obviously not understanding you, and it's not really productive for any party. And if it's too much for them, that's on them, and that's a loss for them. It's not a loss for you. You're just going to redirect that energies elsewhere. And then I think with that being said, when you are in the places where you are an effective leader, you are too much. That's me now. People will look at me and will tell me, don't say, I'll kind of say to people, I have a lot on my plate right now, right? Like I'm doing 10 different things and I know how that looks. It makes me look scattered. And everyone's like, you shouldn't say that. You shouldn't say that because it diminishes you. I'm like, no, this is me just being honest and vulnerable. This is how this could look if I wasn't intentional. But if you take the moment to find my intention behind all of what I do, it's actually very cyclical, right? And sometimes so cyclical it surprises me. And so I know I'm aligned internally when all my goals start coming together full circle. And that passion is then creating this flywheel effect, if you've read Good to Great, where it moves things past you, where you're not really, the energy's outside of yourself. And I think the key is to transfer that energy from inside you to other people around you that maybe don't have that, right? But you have to be in a specific position, to do that. Be very intentional because people like us, our minds move fast. They're wicked fast. And people
Mm.
don't, that is a lot for people that can't keep up with you. When they're saying too much, I think we've taken it offensively. But honestly, I kind of look at it as, hey, if I'm too much for you, that means I can dull myself a little bit for you, not put so much energy into this and go do 10 other things. I'm still winning because I still have this relationship with you, but I'm also getting to accomplish 12 other things that other people can't. So too much to me sounds like I'm right on track. And actually, I'm getting more effective and efficient with what I'm doing. And so I can put half the energy into doing what takes you all your energy to do the same thing. I take it as a compliment now because I'm like, you're right. You don't understand. That's totally fine. But I do. And I know my goals and I know where I'm going. So I think it always comes back to, and you'll keep finding this, it's really about you and your core intention and your goals. When you have that figured out, and it's going to change, and you're going to think you have it figured out, and then you're going to revisit it, and then you're going to do it all over again, over and over and over. That's kind of why I have all these metaphors of water and cycles, because it's true. It's very true. Know that that's okay. You're not in the wrong place. You're growing and you're changing, and you want to do that. And then when you can get outside yourself, that's when the real change starts to happen, right? When you can get that passion to move independent of you, you know you're doing the right thing because we are built different, and we're built in a way that we're supposed to fill people's cups in a way that is still filling our own cup.
Mm.
But don't give it away. Don't just give it to people that don't appreciate it, because I've been that person and all it's done has burned me. It's burned me every time because people have just misunderstood me. And that's okay. But what has that caused me to do? Become a very intentional, clear communicator. The person you see now is not the person you'll see writing you an email at 8 a.m. on a Monday, right? Those conversations are very different. but it gives me permission to be who I want to be and put the energy where I want it to go. It's actually someone giving you permission not to have to be so much. They just don't know how to say it appropriately because they're not emotionally aware. And
Mm,
that's a good and a bad thing, right? I mean,
yeah.
maybe it's opportunity for you to scaffold and build the bridge. You're coming in here, they're here, come here. All that extra energy that you just, saved, what are you gonna do? A hobby, your husband, your kids, your house? Like, you can go do something else. You can be with someone else. You can be more than just one thing. And I think that's why emotional intelligence is so important, right? Because we're not identifying ourselves with our job or our partner
Mm,
or our hobbies. We're identifying ourselves as a whole person. And I think that's where professional development has really fallen apart is we just come to work and we're professional. That's
mm,
robotic. We need to be ourselves. And if we get to do the same job as somebody else in half the time and still be a creative, a musician, a mother, well, that's where the secret is, right? That's what an effective society is. And we've kind of diminished ourselves by labeling it as an 8 to 5 job or 40 hours a week
yeah.
or this many, like that's where the conversation needs to go. Emotional intelligence, I feel like, has even been the conversation isn't right. We're talking about bringing emotion to work and being our best selves and blah, blah, blah. Yeah. But what does that really mean? Like, we can be our best selves. Emotions are important, but that doesn't happen overnight. I mean, there's a reason like religion and systems and processes have been connected and counted on because we need systems to bridge the gap for people that just don't know where to start. And that doesn't take one person to do that. And so I think we're going through a period of enlightenment where we're really having to acknowledge the significance of emotion, different people's levels of emotion, and then how to integrate that because we need to look at people as whole people. It doesn't work segmenting it out. It only works for short periods of time to compound and build. I think what we've done is we've broken it down to such a simple system. We've forgotten to build it back out to be all encompassing again. We've stripped it to the bones because it was so chaotic, but that doesn't go away. If you strip something to the bones and are just so system driven that you can't acknowledge a human,
Mm,
then what are we doing? What are we doing?
yeah. And I think that that goes to my next question, and I was excited to ask this because can can a can an environment work environment become too professionally composed? And one of the reasons why I left my corporate job is it didn't allow me to be my authentic, genuine self.
Mhm.
There's a certain language you need to speak. There's a certain way you need to dress. There's a 9 to 5-ness about it. And it just started to eat away at me. Now, mind you, it took 15 years to eat away, so it couldn't have been all that bad.
Mm-mm.
But there was a culture there that just did not sit well with who I am, which is kind of like you had mentioned yourself, Emily. It's like we're a little extra, we're energetic, we got some passion. Maybe we don't speak the corporate language the way it's supposed to be. I hate even saying supposed to be spoken, or necessarily dress the way you're supposed to dress each and every day. But is there a cost to a company, to an organization, to be too professionally composed all the time? Like what's the damage we see or we don't see when leaders don't feel safe to be human and just let their guard down a little bit. And I know we've been preaching vulnerability, so this is really where it comes to a head. It's
Yeah.
like what happens to a company when they're so rigid in their professional composure that leaders like, and I've seen this firsthand. I've seen people who were colleagues got moved into leadership positions and changed
Yeah.
180 degrees. And it was so saddening to see that.
Yeah. I think there's a couple pieces to this. I think professionalism is necessary in some aspects because some people
For
need pretty
sure.
clear guidelines. I mean, I think as a species we love to push the boundary, right? We love to go a little further, see what we can accomplish. And that's great and we should, right? I mean, I'm never going to say that shouldn't happen. I think that's where leaders like myself, you need to exist to kind of be dynamic enough to adjust as needed. I think it's why
Mhm.
you have to have your finger on the pulse all the time because you're right. Like too professional is robotic and it kind of takes the humanness out of what makes us a strong person and like what makes humans human. We don't want to become robotic. I think we fight that all the time, even though processes are clean. I think you choose your 5 to 6 processes that you're going to stay consistent with, and the rest you just let go. There's some staff I deal with that I know are a little bit over the top and I know that about them, but their benefits outweigh their risks, right? They're great patient care advocates. They go above and beyond. But I know for them, I have to be the boundary. I have to be the person that gives those stress management techniques, those things that help them be their best version of themselves. Think there is a danger to being too vulnerable where people start carrying the loads of others that they shouldn't have to. So I think vulnerability can't exist without accountability. And if you really strip this back, like people need to be clear in their intentions and have accountability, I think the rest can follow and build trust. But it's not a simple sequence. It's not like first be transparent, then do this, then trust happens. That's not how any of this happens, right? And so I think it challenges and forces people to embrace the too much people to kind of insert themselves in these scenarios, the people that have that knowing and that intuition, that ability to look at a scenario and say, this is appropriate and this isn't, and then making sure they're being checked as well. I think it also encourages people that are, this is where experience is super important. You can't lead a company and not have done the job of the people that you're asking them to do. I would never ask my staff to do something that I wouldn't do myself. So if
Yep.
you don't have that knowing, you really just discredit yourself completely. I can't tell you how many people I've worked for. They're telling me this story, right? Of this is how it should go. This is how it should go. And I'm like, well, have you been here? Have you tried it yourself? If you haven't, then you're paying me to have the expertise to know that that doesn't work. And that is why I'm not doing that. And this is my other solution. So then
Mm.
that's my accountability, right? Like I don't get to just say, this doesn't work, so I'm going to coast. No, I can say, that doesn't work, but I'm going to try this, this, and this and report back and let you know how this works. Some people think I'm nuts. Some people, I mean, and like I said, sometimes I feel like I'm nuts. But every time I've taken a risk and gone above and beyond and not doubted myself, it's always paid off.
Yeah.
Maybe not in the way I thought it was going to pay off, but it has. And so I think to those people that relate to this, that's where we plug in. That's why we're here. That is the solution. It's people like us that master our communication skills, have the awareness and the emotional intelligence to start the conversation, and the accountability to introduce processes to make it all make sense. I think there's a huge opportunity for us to level up and be that next generation of leaders. I think it requires people to get over themselves. And I think the people that are going to get over themselves aren't you and I. It's usually the people above us. It's usually the people in roles that have been doing it a really long time and haven't changed. Like to me, a red flag that has started to occur, if I'm not seeing professional development or hobbies or things in addition to a 10-year work career, they're dead inside, man. Like they're just going through the motions. And that doesn't mean all the time, right? Like there's some people that are just really good at what they do and they've they've mastered it and they're a little bit different than the type of person I'm talking about. But I think it requires the movers and the shakers, the people that have all this energy and this passion to plug into these systems and be effective with our energy. Don't be the hurricane because you could be. We can be very reckless. Be the person that forecasts it and has the plan to pick it up when it happens. And then how are we going to mitigate this the next time it happens? Because you know what's going to happen. And I think just knowing the people that are stuck in those spaces, like knowing who those people are and knowing how you're going to address them because they are a necessary evil. And frankly, it takes all kinds of people. Right? So I'm not saying they're wrong. I'm saying there needs to be diversity to combat those weaknesses if that's that person's weakness. Right? We still need those kinds of people that have been here 10, 15, 20 years that have seen the cadence that know
Yeah.
like they're so necessary, but that doesn't mean it's the end all be all. There's room for all of us to coexist. We just need to start making room and get over our egos.
Yeah. Um, People don't leave bad jobs, they leave bad leaders. I've seen that on social media a lot in the past couple of years. I don't know who coined the term, but man, were they bang on. I think about every job that I've left or really just didn't, and everybody has those jobs they've left, and it's like, yeah, it really wasn't the job necessarily. Because I've espoused this before to the clients I work with. I said, your employees, and I'm simplifying, Emily, but I said your employees want three things. Because your employees aren't leaving for a dollar down the road. They're leaving because they don't like you. But it's like they want to like who they work for. So that's the owners, right? It's the people who are the leaders in their company, depending on the closeness of the relationship. They want to like who they work with, means their colleagues at their immediate level and in their particular group. And they want to feel a sense of purpose in what they're doing, right? They want to kind of like what they're doing in their job. I said, if your employees have two of the three, they're probably not going anywhere. Now, all wages aside, all fair wages on the table, but they're probably not going anywhere. If you can provide all three, they've hit the jackpot, and you've got a loyal employee probably for life, or at least for a long time.
Yeah.
If they only have one of the three, it's like, man, I really love the people I work with, but man, we all hate the boss, and this job sucks. they're not staying. So I want to talk about the term psychological safety, right? And
Mhm.
burnout, because burnout generally gets blamed on workload, but I think you've said it's tied to emotional neglect, which speaks to psychological safety. And I love that because you're right. I don't know if burnout is tied to workload because if I love who I work for, work with, and love what I do, I'll work harder. I'll work longer hours. I'll do this forever. It's
Mhm.
not the workload that's burning me out. It's do I want to be in that environment day in and day out? Do I get the Sunday scaries before Monday morning? Do I really want to have the energy sucking boss or leader, director, whoever that's just like taking my life from me? You know, do I want to be part of that? So going back to the statement, burnout is blamed on workload generally, but you tied to emotional neglect. Let's unpack that.
Yeah, I would yes, 110%. I couldn't have said that better myself. Yeah, because I've worked 3 jobs at once before and not been burnt out,
Yeah.
truly, because I loved everything that I was doing. I mean, I'm doing it now. I'm working my job, I'm
Hmm.
publishing books, I'm doing podcast tours, like, people would be like, "I don't know how you have the energy for that," and I'm like,
Yeah.
"'Cause I love what I do."
Love what I do. Yeah.
Uh, I think burnout, we like to blame it all on our employers, but
Sure.
it does need to come back on the employee a bit. Don't go
Okay.
to a job and then complain about the job when you know what the job was that you signed up for. That's my
Hmm.
first thing. Like, I think
Okay.
I always tell people, "Don't move to Arizona and complain it's hot outside." Like, I don't know what to tell you, this is just how it is, right? So
Right.
let's get that out of the way because I think if you're going in expecting it to be something completely different, it's not, it's on you to change that. Don't hang around and then be surprised when you don't like what you do anymore. So let's
Sure.
start with the accountability piece because I think we like to blame everything on everyone else before we look at ourselves. Not saying that's always the case. So let's say
Hmm.
you are accountable. Cool. I'm here, love my job. I'm an expert at what I do. But nobody, like, I come to work and nobody asks me who I am. Nobody cares about what I do. Nobody cares about anything about me besides out here. They encouraged me when I was developing my leadership skills, ask about their dog, ask about their family. That's not even the conversation that needs to happen. Like, sure, that's a good gateway. But if you just ask me every Monday how my dog is, do you think I feel seen? Right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I think we need to start having conversations of what makes you feel inspired. Are you inspired? What do you like to do? You're really good at this, this, and this. Let's structure your job to fit those qualities
Right.
so that you're inspired every day you come to work. I was at the HPCO conference for hospice this past week, and people asked me, like, what's the secret? What's the secret to getting, your staff to want to come to work? People are dying. Nobody wants to do that, blah, blah, blah. Well, there's a lot of autonomy in hospice and home care, right? Like they make their own schedule. They get to create their relationships. They get to create all these pieces with them that's truly theirs. Like they really truly own this patient's care and there's a lot of pride and inspiration in that. And so I always say like we build a system that inspires people and then I get the heck out of the way. And then I check in every 60 days, 30 days. How is this process working? How is it? What do you like about it? What would you change? What's working great? What can we do to make it better? Is it good where it's at? Do you have bandwidth to create another process similar that's going to help with this? Those are the conversations that get people inspired, directed towards work, kind of negate some of that emotionality that might take their energy away from the job. Right? Because I think sometimes too, you come to work, someone's going through a divorce, their parents died, the grandparents died, the dog died, and they're so focused on their emotional neglect or where they're at that they can't come to work and perform, right? And that's a different place to be in. But when that person exists, accepting them where they're at, there's a time period we just have grace. But also, I would encourage them to a conversation I would have with that person if it were my staff member. Hey, I know things are really hard at home or whatever. This is what we're doing at work. We want to partner with you. What can we do to support you through this that's still inspiring you, that gives you a little bit of a break from that mental load that you're having at home? I mean, you can leverage it against the personal piece too. And I think there's been times in my life where I have been more invested in my career than my personal life. Could be arguable, but that's where I found inspiration, where I found the most growth, and it actually generalized to my personal life and taught me how to navigate some of those really hard emotions that I just didn't know what to do with. And so I think that's once again why we have to look at the whole person and use strategies at work that they can also generalize to their home. And I think that's also the therapist in me a little bit, right? Like I'm a cognitive therapist, I scaffold things for people, but I think you should look at work as a tool for you too. It's a tool for you. Like, how often do you get to collaborate in a team that's consistent in processes and be your best self and delegate things to other people that maybe you're not as great at? And then you get to find what inspires you. You get to find your strengths, whether it be the next career opportunity, whether it be a communication skill you learn to bring home to your family, whether it be an inspiration you find that gives you another hobby and resource to support your family. I mean, it's all very cyclical. I think you shouldn't be afraid to dedicate yourself to work and like invest in it. I think it's a good thing when you've already talked about when we've talked about all the other pieces, the emotional intelligence, the awareness, the boundaries, like all that has to exist. But I would encourage you to dive deep, figure out, what do I love? What am I inspired by? What can I bring to the table and effectively communicate to my boss that I'm good at? I can do this job that, Susie down the chair is doing. I can do it in half the time. Help her, give her something she's inspired by. It's really getting out of your own way. Especially for me, it's not about your ego. It's about exacerbating your strengths and then getting out of the way for the next person to make room for them. That's how we elevate people. That's how we make room for emotion at work. Because if everything's done, right, and we're getting this job that was supposed to take 40 hours done in 20 hours, I have time to dive into some of this emotional intelligence with you. I have time to give you strategies. I have time to invest in you and help you combat that fear, that anxiety, that anger, whatever that emotion that you're having, because we're so effective and sound with where we're putting our energy in the first place.
Mm,
That's kind of how I look at it. But, we
yeah.
also live in a very capitalistic society where it's like, well, we should do more so we have room to do more things. Obviously, I don't want to get political because that's not something we want to do. But I think we need to be more human centered. If we're human centered, it's surprising how much more effective and passionate people are, when we start looking at the people first with
Yeah.
boundaries. We don't want to go the complete opposite direction and get too extreme when we get lost in the sauce again, because we tend to do that. We tend to go so far one way or the other. We can't just exist in the now and address the now. And I think if we could just get over that a bit, it might work, it might not. We'll probably find new problems, but isn't that human nature? And
Mm,
that's why we're here. So I,
yeah.
I think it's kind of just accepting what is and knowing that whatever comes, you're equipped. And if you're not, you're going to find someone that is, and then you're going to partner with them and you're going to learn from that experience.
I That struck a chord with me. I recently had a podcast guest on, Ryan Gottfredson, who talks about vertical development of people and horizontal development of people, and
Mhm.
it speaks to human beings and human doing. And he said people are so obsessed, and this matches the effort over results philosophy that we talk about here. It's like people want to be human doings. They want the accolades, they want the titles, they want to show people all the accomplishments they've achieved. They want to keep doing things, but they're not, but that's all horizontal development. That's all along a timeline and a path. Whereas how much are they developing themselves
Yep.
vertically? How much are they becoming human beings? Like you said, where's the human development and the emotional development happening?
Mm.
You can go out and check boxes all day about things that you've accomplished, things you've done. But if you really aren't becoming better emotionally, better, spiritually, physically, and so forth, you're not a human being anymore. You're a human doing. You
Sure.
literally are just a machine that just keeps racking up points, as opposed
Yeah.
to someone who can be an emotional leader. So I want to use that as the sort of the impetus behind my next question, and this is where we start to bring things to a head. Um, you say it's not that deep. It's not that deep until it is.
Yeah.
So what do you mean by that?
So when I wrote It's Not That Deep, I had just gone through a very deep period in my life. And it was more of a, like, okay, I can give myself permission to not, right?
Mm,
Like, you only get to say it's not that deep when you've been through it. And so I think, but when you focus it on the lens of it's not that deep, it gives you space to accept what is.
mm,
And instead of doing the would'ves and the could'ves and the should'ves and the this and the that, you're focused on the present and you're looking at what you can control and where you're putting your energy, right? So I think It's Not That Deep is a tool for the people that are that deep, right? It's funny you say like it's not that deep. What an oxymoron. I know. My husband didn't read the book until I published it and read it. He didn't want to sway my thoughts,
yeah.
right? And so then he read the book and he goes, really great book, Em. He's like, but isn't that kinda, like, so not you? He's like, I was so mad at him. I was like, "I just wrote this book," and
I
when I
hate
wrote the
that.
book, oh my
Yeah.
god, but he's not wrong. But when I wrote the book, it was from a different lens of my life, it was
Yep.
mastering some of these things that were consuming me. And so when I wrote the book, really no plan behind it. I just published it. Like I published it last September and I left it. I was really vulnerable, which is not my forte, and I published it, didn't really consider, "Hey, here's my live thoughts out in the world for everyone to read." I just did it, and then I left it alone, and, really starting to kind of contemplate, like, what is it's not that deep, you know? To me, it's getting to the point of we are who we are, we're human, and that's okay, and we don't need to deep dive everything. Uh, Accept yourself where you're at and leverage that to help others and help yourself. That's what it's not that deep means. It's not that deep means life is heavy, life is really complicated, it's gonna knock you down every step you take, but you get to say it's not that deep when you want to. You get to take a break and get out of the thick of it. So I wanted it to be a tool for the next person that finds themselves in the new leadership position, the new relationship, and whatever it is, to look at yourself as a whole person and level up in all aspects. Don't get so pigeonholed into one vision that you diminish your own potential. And so that was where I wrote It's Not That Deep in. But it's funny you mentioned that. So yeah, my husband commented on it. And so I have the second book written called In Too Deep, and I'm going to publish it at some point. But it's kind of the walk of life of what are these emotions? And like when you are in the thick of it, like getting in too deep isn't a bad place either. Sometimes you need to do that to figure out who you are. You
Mm,
just don't want to stay there. You just don't want to
right.
stay there, you know? And so it's not that deep was permission to step back and let things be. But also utilizing your strengths to find your potential.
Yeah. So let's talk about the book as we wrap up here. You said it came out last year in the fall.
Mhm.
What is the number one message you want people to know from that book? What is that call to action? But then
Yeah,
also let's talk about where they can find the book, where they can find you, and
sure.
let's promote what you're trying to bring to the table here.
Yeah. So if you're going to read It's Not That Deep, I hope you look at it as a tool to build your emotional intelligence. I hope you
Mhm.
see it as a lifeline of strategies that meets you where you're at. And it talks about things like timing, perfectionism, vulnerability, all the things that we've kind of touched on today and more. It's a very metaphorical, personal way of writing that's a little bit different than just your self help book. And so, if any of this kind of relates to you, you can find it on Amazon. It's Not That Deep on Amazon. And that's just kind of where I've been selling it. But I'm also on Instagram at It's Not That Deep _ author. I've been working on Instagram. I'm going to be really honest. I'm not the great marketing is not my forte, writing is. So that's why I was like, maybe podcasts, because podcasts definitely you get to kind of get the vision and the feel behind it. You know, there's 110 self-help books out there.
Mm,
And I just felt like there was a gap between tying our whole selves into emotional intelligence and then utilizing that energy to be our best selves, whether it be, I think professionally is my focus right now. But this is for anybody that finds themselves, it could be mothers, parents,
yep.
you know, whoever it is. You might just be looking for balance. You might be looking for entrepreneurship. Like this book isn't just for the young professionals. I think you'll find it advantageous, but this book is for anyone that finds themselves so caught up in themselves. They need a fresh breath of fresh air. I hope it prompts some self reflection and kind of gives you a moment to step out of the thick of it to really gain perspective and awareness. And so that's kind of where I wanted It's Not That Deep to end.
Well, and I don't want you to sell yourself short in the sense that when you like obviously I'm my book's coming out this fall and it does apply to all fields and avenues, but it's what I think when we know that there's tens of thousands of self-help books, coaching books, things like that, life coaching books out there. No one's book is should be considered to be filling a gap. I think it's who hears the message and who it really touches, right? And I think you said it beautifully how your book, the message behind it isn't just for the corporate world or business world. It can apply to parents, it can apply to teachers, educators, everybody, because the message is it transcends it, right?
Mhm.
So I think people should take a good look at the book. I'm going to have it in the show notes. I'm going to make sure that the Amazon link is there as well. Emily, thank you very much for being here today. Let's do two final questions, a little rapid fire. Who are
Sure.
your influences? Because I believe you said you were 30 years of age. The depth of emotional intelligence and what you bring to the table is outstanding, and that's not meant to be condescending at all. I'm
Oh,
wholly
man.
impressed by it. I love it when I speak to people who are everybody's younger than me these days, it seems, but who have that breadth of knowledge and that wisdom
Mhm.
that usually comes with decades of experience. And I
Yeah.
love what you've said today because I think you show decades of experience and knowledge even in your young years. So this book is going to be
Mhm.
the start of bringing that to people. But who are your influences? Who really got you into this area and inspired you to write the book, to decide to go outside of your corporate job and bring this message to the world?
I always thought people were like pop culture references because I'm not a big pop culture person. Like, I don't really like look at someone and think, "Oh, I was inspired by this person."
Yeah.
I would say, Brianna West was her
Oh,
book
yes.
101 Essays was the
Oh my
first book that
God, that
I
is my favorite book from the last 5 years. Literally,
yeah,
it changed my life.
yeah,
Thank you
that
for
book.
bringing that up, Brianna.
Of
Yeah.
course, she's phenomenal.
Yeah.
When I read that book, it's interesting, nobody influenced me. I don't wanna be like, "Oh, it's me," but, like, no one
Yeah.
influenced me to write. I just did it, and I don't know why. It was just so
Mhm.
intrinsic for me. But that book, The
Nice.
101 Reasons, was a book that
Yeah.
just shook me to my core, and it was a lot of quotes written down that I always recommend to everyone. Obviously, Brené Brown, just that
Yeah.
radical vulnerability, I would say is someone I track with often, and wait,
Mhm.
there's one more book. Let me look. Adam Grant. I
Yeah,
really like
right?
Adam Grant.
Yep.
He does a really good job of that. There's music's been a big part of my life, so any type of music has been very influential on me because
Yeah.
deep down I'm a sad girl that listens to sad music all the time. So I think I didn't have an influence at the time of writing the book, but I think it's going to open doors. I think I'm kind of doing it backwards. I think my story is I start here and then I expand out. And so that's my honest answer because every time I get asked that question, I don't have a good one, which is unusual for me because I can talk a lot. But I think it's coming. I do have mentorship closer professionally where I've gone like I had a mentor through my past job with my old company. I still talk to him daily and then I have a mentor in the current job that I'm just really I think I just talk at them and they just nod at sometimes, but they also will check me and give me a lot of hope and clarity, which I appreciate from them.
It's great to have those people in your life, mentors and
Mhm.
just people you can almost vent to and they just sit and listen and nod and yeah, it's a
Mhm.
beautiful relationship. Well, Emily Erstad, thank you very much for being here today. I appreciate what you've brought to my audience. I would have loved to have connected, what your message is to effort over results, but I think there are some synergies there.
Yeah.
And like I said, people could find the book on Amazon. It's a message that, like I said before, transcends business. Even though we need leaders to be emotional, leadership comes in many forms and shapes and sizes. Parents are leaders, teachers are leaders, coaches are leaders, and obviously in business. So thank you for bringing this message today. And I hope you enjoyed being on the EOR podcast.
Appreciate it.